Hey guys, Dave Schweeder with Entrust Facility Services on a Friday afternoon. I wanted to make a quick video on how best to make sure that your areas are not only clean but disinfected, and there's a difference, and I'll explain why. I'd like to briefly talk about three things, which would be alcohol-based disinfectants, hydrogen peroxide-based disinfectants, and soap. And you might be surprised by the end of this little video that soap is actually the best way to keep your hands disinfected. I'll explain why. Okay, first of all, with alcohol. Alcohol works. Now, alcohol, according to the CDC, is only effective in levels of 60% or higher. Alcohol works by drying out the fatty membrane around a virus. Now, all these little viruses have a little shell that's made of fat. So alcohol works by drying that out. Once it dries out, it begins to break down. Once it breaks down, the alcohol then breaks apart the DNA that's inside the virus and it kills it. However, you might get the idea that it does indeed take some time for this to work. So just spraying alcohol on your hand and that alcohol is quickly gone might not get the job done. That's why actually a hand sanitizer with alcohol in a more liquid form allows it to sit on your skin longer and thereby disinfect better. But to really get the full effect of an alcohol-based disinfectant, you really need to read the label closely and see how long that needs to sit on a surface. So if you're spraying your desk at work with a high alcohol disinfectant, you might want to spray it and then leave it till it actually dries. That way you give it time to work. So alcohol works by drying out, breaking down that outer layer. The next one is the hydrogen peroxide. Now, it's quite interesting with hydrogen peroxide. It's very similar to water. Water is one oxygen molecule and two hydrogens. Hydrogen peroxide is two oxygen atoms, not molecules, and two hydrogens. And oxygen is a very, very unique little atom. Oxygen only has 6 electrons in its outer shell, but it always wants to have 8. So what that does is it's always trying to steal electrons from other atoms. Now, when you put hydrogen peroxide on a surface, what it does is it's a very unstable connection. The hydrogen peroxide will release an oxygen atom, and that oxygen atom will then start looking to steal electrons from areas on that surface. And all living things are composed with carbon, and so what hydrogen peroxide does is it gets on there, it actually starts to steal electrons from the carbon structures on the surface of the virus, and then the surface of the virus breaks down and becomes unstable, and it dies. And it's very, very effective, and that's why we used to use it for treating wounds, because anything that's in the wound, like when you're a kid, back when I was a kid, and you cut yourself, you pour yourself on there and it bubbles, that's all that oxygen being released, and what that's doing is as it's being released, it's quickly pulling electrons out of anything that's organic in the wound and breaking it down and killing it. It also used to kill healthy tissue, so people don't use it as much anymore. Now again, and you'll notice that we use a lot of hydrogen peroxide products when we are disinfecting an area, but we, according to our manufacturer label, our most popular product, you actually have to leave on the surface for 5 minutes before you clean it off. And what that does is it gives that oxygen atom that's being released time to destroy anything on the surface. Then when you wipe it off, anything that's left is dead and you don't have to worry about it. So the third one I want to talk briefly about is soap. Now again, remember at the beginning of this discussion, I talked about how viruses are little fatty bags, and the stuff in the virus is inside. Well, if you've ever gotten grease on your hands, you can run your hands under the water, but the grease is still there. And so what do you do when you have grease on your hands is you need soap. And what does the soap do? The soap actually breaks that fat apart, and it breaks it into its little components, and it makes it easy to wash off. The same thing is true when let's say you imagine we had coronavirus on our hands. Well, what would happen is if we just ran our hands underwater, it would stay, because it's just like that grease. It's a little fatty molecule. Well, when we put soap on there, what happens is the soap begins to break that fatty molecule down into its components, and then when we wash our hands, it all washes away. It completely kills the virus. Now, here's the thing. For the soap to have time to work completely, in studies, is 20 seconds. Now, when we say 20 seconds, I don't mean furiously scrubbing your hands so that the flesh is falling off afterwards. We're talking about just gentle agitation so the soap is moving around and it's touching all that surface. And really, it does take 20 seconds. And then by the end of that time, the soap has had time to break down all those little virus particles, and you rinse your hands, and now your hands are actually very, very clean. And that being the case, if the soap says antibacterial, is that important? According to the CDC and common sense, it's not. Antibacterial soap and any other soap does the same thing. They break down grease, they break down fats. So as long as your soap is making your hands less oily and you're just gently working it for that little bit of time, it's going to kill viruses that are on it. But remember, in studies they've done, 20 seconds is really important as to getting that completely broken down. So, moral of the story, you can clean by wiping things off. You can get a sanitizing wipe and wipe things off. But if you really want to disinfect something, you have to understand that disinfecting takes time, no matter what product you use. So read the label and, use soap. It's cheap, it's plentiful, and it's very, very effective. And it's probably one of the most effective things you can do to protect yourself from this virus. So enjoy the rest of your day, and I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.